Now I'll go ahead and again insert another layout for my div tag. I want it to be after the tag, and the tag I want it to go after is my jet ski. I'll create a new CSS rule, ID. I'll go ahead and call this right. And this one is, I'm going to call it right rocks because it's climbing and hiking the rocks. It's going into my external style sheet. I'll say OK. Immediately set up my box. This one again will be 325 with a height of 246. I want it to float left. No padding. That's all I'm going to put into this one, and I'll say OK. Now on this one, we've been putting these images in on top of, or as an image in the div tag. But for this right one, I wanted to show you, you can use any image that you have as a background image. And the beauty of that is you're able to format any of the text or other content that goes in on top of that background image. So for Right Rocks, I don't have a background image or a background color. I'm going to go ahead and add that. So I'll double click on my CSS style rule here, Right Rocks, to open up my CSS rules definition, and I'm going to choose background, and for my background image I'll click browse, and I want to pull in the Lake Powell rocks as the image. So there it is. I'll say open. That's going to be a background image now, so I can put other content on top of it, and I'll say OK. There it is. It pulls in nicely, and notice that my content is still there. I could say hiking in Lake Powell is like heaven. Now, that doesn't stand out real well. It's kind of flush with the border of this div tag at the top and the left. But again, if I come into my Right Rocks and set up, let's say, a font family of Tahoma, I want the color to be, where we're at, we'll keep it black. And a font size, I want it to be larger. I'll make it 2 M's. And maybe I'll add a font variant of small caps to this. Then in my box, I'll go ahead and actually set up some padding. I want this to kind of come down a little bit from the top, so I'll have it come down maybe 60 pixels. Oops, I don't want same for all, so I'll say 0. Turn off same for all, and then just set the top to 60 pixels. And then for the margin here, I want it to be centered. Well, actually, we'll get into that. Let's go ahead and set a left here to pull that over a little bit, and we'll go ahead and make it 30 pixels to the left for our padding. And when I say OK, you'll see that things kind of get a little screwy. It did move it down, made it in a bigger white font, but it also caused this div tag to get bigger. Now remember, we're dealing with the box model here, and when I set up a padding left of 30 pixels and a padding top of 60, it's actually adding that to the overall width. Actually, the padding left, it's adding to the overall width, and the padding top is being added to the overall height. So I'm going to go ahead and change that. Just use my regular calculator. For some reason it's not behaving right. 186. There we go. I apologize, it wasn't calculating correctly. Usually that works, but using my calculator and subtracting 60 from it, I'll go ahead and get that. And for the width here, let me just double check that I'm right there. It should be 325 minus the padding of 30. So that's $2.95, which is exactly what I have. Typically that works, but for some reason on my machine it's not. But right now you get the gist of it. Here we have our 3 graphics laid out. Now I'll go ahead and put in my content area. So again, I'll insert a layout object, div tag, new, oops, let me do a cancel, come back here. I want it to go after tag. Oops, I don't think it took that. After tag, and the tag I want it to go after is my rocks. I want to create a new CSS rule. It's an ID selector type. I'll call this content. I want it to go into my external style sheet. I'll say OK. And now I'll go ahead and give this a box width of 960. And I'm not going to set height because I'm going to let the content that I put into the page create the height. But I do need to clear the floats because at this point I want it to start stacking underneath my images. So I'll come here to the clear, and I want to clear the left float, which is the only one I've set. There it is. So I'll clear the left float. And I think, I can go ahead and set my font type and family. I want it to be Tahoma. Oops. And a font size of 0.9 M and a color of black. I'll say OK to that. Double check myself. Everything looks good. There's my content area, and just to show, I'll put a couple returns in there to create the area. And then finally, I'm going to set up my footer area. So I'll do an insert, layout objects, div tag. I want this to go after tag, and the tag I want it to go after is content. Create my new CSS rule. It's an ID. I'll call this my footer. Here's my Lake Powell. Say OK to it. In my box, I want to make it 960 pixels. And the height of this, I would like to make, let's say 60 pixels for right now. I don't need to clear a float. It is going to stack, but I'm right back to clearing the float from my content, so footer will stack naturally right underneath it the way it's intended to. I'll go ahead and add a background color, and the color I want is the A00. And again, I'll set my font family to Tahoma. I want an even smaller font size here of 0.8 Ms. And the color I want is white, so it will stand out well, like up here in my navigation, the white color does. And I'll say OK to that. Double check yourself here. OK. And then I'll just say Lake Powell, replace the default text here. Heaven on earth. Come visit us. And to center that, I just need to add in my CSS property for my footer. I'll open up the CSS rule definition, and I will want to center my text under text align, center in the block category. I'll say OK to that. And there, that's nicely centered. I can add some padding too to center it better, but I wanted to show you just kind of how to create your homepage layout using your images from Photoshop that you sliced, and we have the start of one here. We'll take this farther next week while I develop a little bit more of these areas. But keep in mind that we brought some images in as content in the div tag. And then for this div tag, we place the image as a background image, and we're able to actually put text on top of it. Or that could have been graphics. You can put anything on top of it when you use the image as a background image. So I hope that helps you. I'll go ahead and save this page so we can start with it next week. But please work through the rest of the course as indicated in the content area for Class 9 of D2L. I'll talk to you soon.